This film will focus on an immigrant named JP. JP is an immigrant from Mexico. He works at a burger restaurant called Lady Liberty, owned by a governor. But because he is an immigrant, there are rumors that immigrants are considered invaders and are also hated. They are even considered enemies to the extent that those in power plan to capture them all. In his job, JP sometimes often receives racist treatment from white people. He also has a sister named Lily. Long story short, one day Lily and her family were celebrating her birthday, but suddenly the police officers burst in and arrested JP's family. This happened because of an order from Governor Harper Finn to arrest undocumented immigrants, especially children. Even others in America were also arrested, and this was done as a political move ahead of the upcoming governor's election. All the immigrant children were gathered in one place. Until one time, JP saw his sister being taken away by the officers. JP tried to call his sister, but Lily did not hear JP's call. Day after day passed in that place, until one day JP found out that the immigrants were arrested because the immigrants were not really known in the election, so Governor Finn wanted all the detained immigrants to leave on election day. Then, JP was finally given a choice to get out of the detention place by taking care of the elderly in a program founded by a man named Eddie Davis. JP made friends with Big Mac, Camilla, Chris, and Micah. In this program, they were not given communication with the outside world. They were even fitted with monitors on their ankles so as not to violate the curfew set. In this place, they were all assigned to help the seniors. Eddie also promised this place would make them more mature. After showing the room where they rested, James and Cynthia took them to show some of their work locations. There is a water therapy and aerobics room to calm the elderly, then a common area where they spend most of their time entertaining the elderly, and lastly, a popular garden used for meditation. But here, there is an elderly woman who catches JP's attention. In the common room, JP chooses to take care of that woman. Initially, JP was confused about what to do, and luckily Micah came to help by suggesting reading a book. But when JP read the book, suddenly the woman said that JP would die in this place. She kept saying it, along with a sad look on her face. Then moving on to lunch, but here strangely, Chris doesn't want to eat at all and also plans to escape. Not only that, they were being watched to see if any of them and their friends had the courage to oppose this program. But Chris doesn't know who that person is. Here, his friends don't believe Chris's words. Even Micah asks Chris to try to escape, but unfortunately Chris is caught by the officers. At night, when JP goes to urinate, he meets an owl. Unfortunately, when he returns to his room, he is startled by an old woman who says that Virgil will set JP free. The old woman keeps saying it until JP accidentally falls, and this makes JP feel scared. But luckily, the seniors come to calm the woman down. After the incident, Eddie apologized and intended to show all the facilities. However, strangely, Chris had not yet returned with his friends. All the elderly here suffer from Alzheimer's, a progressive disease that destroys memory and other mental functions. They are asked to help so that the elderly feel comfortable and prevent the same thing from happening as last night. For this, James shows a quiet way. In this place, there is an elderly man named Yates who is said to be a bit biting. A strange incident happened again shortly after JP released the ties. Suddenly, the old man next to him bit JP's hand until JP fainted. While at the care facility, JP is shocked by his sister Lily, who has treated his wounds. Lily says they are only a mile apart. But suddenly, a strange incident happened again. During the meal, JP asked about Chris again. Out of curiosity, they asked Cynthia, who said that Chris was returned to the detention center for trying to escape. That night, Big Mac was asked to watch over Philip because his body was weak. Big Mac was reminded to play a movie, but when Big Mac tried to play the DVD, strange things happened again, causing Philip to lose consciousness. Big Mac, seeing this, checked Philip's condition. But suddenly a shocking thing happened. Philip is acting weird and creepy, scaring Big Mac. The next morning, Philip had died, and Eddie himself was shocked by what happened. Big Mac told JP about what he saw last night, and it greatly disturbed him. Shortly after, JP, along with James, was invited by Eddie to meet Virgil, and this owl is the gatekeeper of the entire facility. Eddie entrusted the entire business to both of them. Remembering that they had a little fight earlier, Eddie asked them to make peace, but JP took James' bracelet key instead. JP used the key to go to the pool at night. Unlike Big Mac, who enjoyed his night entertainment, it turns out JP likes Micah. And luckily, Camilla understands JP's intentions. Finally, JP was able to be alone with Micah until Micah invited him to a room. One day, while in the garden, JP, who was with Big Mac, saw Greta that again caught his attention. Here, Greta made something exactly like his sister's homemade one at home. But suddenly a strange thing happened again, causing Greta to be moved. This made JP curious, so he went to sneak to meet Greta. But upon arrival, JP had to hide first because of the arrival of James and Cynthia. Then, JP also heard about the increased dosage that made their work easier. Due to high curiosity, JP finally knew that Greta was Lily, his own sister. The next morning, Big Mac questioned JP, but they were told that JP was on duty in the kitchen. But because they were suspicious of JP, remembering their lies about Chris, the three of them made a plan to find out where Chris and JP were. Inside the room, Big Mac and Camilla found a picture of a machine until they finally knew that Chris was placed in a separate room for adjustment. It turns out JP was in a room, and strangely half of his face has aged. Big Mac, who found this out, intended to tell about Chris, but suddenly he was asked to fix the ventilation. When Camilla was giving food to the person she was caring for, suddenly the person threw away his food and actually tried to attack Cynthia. This place turns out to harbor strange things that make these young people suddenly age. JP himself did not stay silent. He intended to get out of this strange room. Meanwhile, on the other side, Eddie met with Governor Finn, and strangely here they talked about the taste of the burger that people considered to be the same as the original. Big Mac, unbeknownst to them, was pretending to faint. But because she didn't want to make Eddie angry, Cynthia wanted to inject an adrenaline rush. The door was equipped with a code, but suddenly JP remembered the words about Virgil, who is the gatekeeper, coupled with the old woman's words, and the door code turned out to be Virgil. James, who realized that, asked for help to find JP, who had managed to leave with a weak body. JP, trying to get out, finally arrived at a place that turned out to be where Finn and Eddie had been producing meat made from the bodies of these young people. So the young people were given something to use their bodies. Even Eddie said the taste similar to real meat in general. JP finally met Micah, but unexpectedly Micah was on their side. Shortly after JP was in front of Eddie, Eddie turned out to have made Micah a spy. Previously, he needed people like JP for this work, but with the advancement of these tools, Eddie no longer needs the labor of people like JP anymore. When Camilla tried to release the bracelet, suddenly Big Mac gave the key. After that, Camilla went to a room where she was curious about what was behind the glass, suspected by Chris, and it turned out to be true with what Chris said. Hear Micah tell everything. When Lily arrives, she is immediately given anti-panic medicine by putting it into the drinking water, and it turns out all the words of Chris are true. After that, drinking it will trigger night terror and hallucinations. After that, hormones are given to turn lean muscle into tender meat. But this makes extreme aging until the last breath. The body disintegrates on its own, even triggering waves of violence before dying so that they can be known if their body is ready to be processed. Sometime later, JP questions the whereabouts of Big Mac, but Camilla herself doesn't know. What she knows, Big Mac also tried to escape, and here JP plans something to move after dinner. JP meets Lily again to help Lily's memory. Remembering her and her mother's memories, both of them, and JP promises to get Lily out. Shortly after, they run their plan, and here when the elderly surround the three people, JP leaves, but unfortunately seen by another officer. JP himself tried to fight the man. Even he was made to suffer because his hose was forcibly removed, while the elderly made the officers overwhelmed. Different from Big Mac, who turned out to be in the ventilation. Luckily, Big Mac arrived just in time so JP could still be saved. After that, Big Mac took JP away, but again there were officers. The situation in this place is increasingly uncontrollable, but fortunately, they can escape. But they don't know where to go until they arrive at a place, and JP asks both of them to wait until he finds the way. Meanwhile, Big Mac takes the elderly out. Outside the building, there was a woman who had finished exercising. She intended to go home, but she was surprised by a group of people. It turns out Chris is also old, and all this time he has been trying to warn his friends, But suddenly Eddie attacks JP. JP tried to fight, but because his body was weak, he eventually fainted. In a faint state, Eddie put JP on the grinding machine, but Camilla, who had been following him quietly, intervened just in time, striking Eddie. Eddie had intended to kill JP, but the situation turned when Chris's body, which had melted, was used by Lily to free Chris. Eddie was attacked by Chris, leading to Eddie's demise, presumably ending up in his own machine. After escaping, they rested in the park until Big Mac arrived with other elderly people to join them. In the aftermath, the news of Eddie's corrupt program was widely broadcasted by the media. Governor Finn, the owner of the restaurant, was reported to have fled, and with strong evidence, his restaurant was closed. This allowed the immigrants to reunite with their families. Big Mac, thinking his friends were dead, was tricked, who were actually sleeping because they were now old and tired easily, along with the others who had aged prematurely. Big Mac was the lucky one who was not given the drug, but continued to entertain his friends, and the movie ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.